Let me start with erasing these graphite because you don't want to mix graphite with colored pencils. I did it before. When they mix, they look terrible. First tip I want to give you is to start with the darkest parts. And when you outline the darkest sections with your sepia, then it becomes much easier. The second tip I want to give you is the color combination that you want to use. You have to decide that up front. For example, in his hair, there are 5 different browns. This one is 1, and then there's this lightest color, brown ochre 10%. I have sepia, I have burnt sienna, and I think I also use a little bit of black. If you ask me what the order is, it really doesn't matter, but for me to start with the darkest color is just because it becomes my roadmap. Once I lay down all these darkest boundaries or darkest colors of the hair, then when I look at the reference photo, I exactly know where I'm looking and where I'm going to focus on. And in order to blend them, I use the blending pencil or color blender, but you don't have to. There are so many other techniques that you can use, but I would like to use the color blender for my colored pencil works. Another tip that I want to give you is that the roots will be always darker, so add extra darkness to the roots of the hair. And because the hair curls, then the curling part will be much lighter because the light reflects. There's no order in putting all these browns, but definitely I go with the darkest one first and the lightest one the last. But again, this is my preference. You don't have to do it this way. And here you can see me adding all these colors for the first layer and then trying to add some shine with my erasing pencil. But unfortunately, erasing pencils don't do a great job with colored pencils, for me at least. But electric eraser creates a much better result. But again, my favorite is to use X-Acto knife because it is very thin and it looks like a real hair. But when you're working with X-Acto knife, you have to be careful that you're not going to damage the tooth of the paper. So we are not tearing or we are not cutting the paper, but we are scraping off the pigments from the paper. My first layer is almost ready, and now I'm starting to add more dark color here. This is my second layer. A tip that I want to give you about drawing hair with colored pencil is that darkest sections are the most important. Don't be afraid to go dark. Don't be afraid to add more sepia there or even black. Right now I'm drawing with my black, for example. I didn't add black everywhere, but the darkest points needs to stand out. So that's why I'm adding all these blacks right here. And the second tip that I want to give you is that this section right now we are working on is a perfect example of a wave. The root of the hair is dark and then the end of the hair is also dark because it's having this bump, right? It's curling there, and where it curls it needs to be the lightest because light reflects from the top of that curl, so it is the lightest. So what I add here is the darkest parts, 2 ends of that hair lump. We have sepia, we have burnt sienna, and also some brown ochre. And in the end, I'm adding my brown ochre 10%, which is my lightest color in my hand. And then I blend them. So this is my first layer, but you can see that already this 3D look is shaping there. That lightest color looks like it is towards us. And highlights are as important as the dark shadows. You should add highlights with your eraser or with your X-Acto knife. Also, you can add some white, which I will show in a second. So this is my second layer. With the second layer and the third layer, this curl even will become much more realistic. You will see that in a second that I'm going to add all the other browns and I'm going to add more sepia to the darkest areas, and it's just going to look amazing in the end. This section was a mess. This was very difficult. In order to handle such difficulty, you have to focus on a certain area, not the whole hair, but see the lumps of hair there as triangles, for example, and focus on one triangle at a time. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed. You don't know which hair comes first, which color needs to be added there, which shape is that. But right now, for example, I am doing all these semicircles here, and this is allowing me to focus on one semicircle at a time. So if you see things in geometric shapes like these, and when you focus on one color first, such as I'm focusing on sepia right now, and now I have burnt sienna in my hand, and now I have my brown ochre 10%. Once you just focus on one area and one color, then your job becomes easier. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see in my students is that when I say brown hair, they think like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna color it one brown. But it's not like that, guys. You have shadows, you have highlights, you have different shades inside that brown. So it's actually not one color, but 5, if not 10, you know. But then you run the risk of overdoing it. You don't want to use 10 colors in one hair, because then it's just not gonna look like a real hair. It's gonna look like a colorful wig. Another tip I want to give you is to sharpen your pencils all the time, because we are dealing with hair and it needs to be as sharp as this one. You can see that. There are 2 reasons why I sharpen my pencil all the time like this. One, we are dealing with hair. We are trying to give the structure of hair, so you need thin lines. And the second one is, the sharper your pencil is, the more pigment you're gonna get into the tooth of the paper. And I'm working on a smooth paper right here, Fabriano Bristol paper. This is why sharpening your pencil will be so helpful, because then you will be able to get in those tooth of the paper and leave the pigment there. This area was difficult, as I said, but hey, we managed somehow. And adding all these dark spots here is adding extra dimension to my drawing, as you can see. I want you to watch my process step by step so that you can have an idea, and I would love you to try yourself as well. When you look at the reference photo, I saw some purple here. So I'm adding that purple and blue colors right here with my Payne's gray and some purple, and I think it looked really, really nice. From his skin, I could tell that he's in a cool color environment, and this reflects on hair as well with that purple blue color. Last part is going to be the side of the hair, but it's still not easy. It's shorter hair for sure, but again, there are so many color differences there. I am adding all these sepia ones first because, as I said before, it's my roadmap. I can see where to look in my reference photo once I put down all these darkest parts first. And these little tiny waves here was not helpful, guys. They were a little bit challenging, but just focus on the shapes, focus on one area, one pencil at a time, and you will get there. Adding some highlight here with my electric eraser. And then adding more sepia and more brown here. Okay, the side of the hair, as you can see in the reference photo, have 3 main colors, and it doesn't have much orangish brown color. It has mostly burnt sienna, sepia, and our brown ochre 10%, which is the lightest color that I have here. So I'm going to add now the burnt sienna one. Wherever I see this color, I'm also shading here. I don't care about giving the hair structure there, just shading there. And once I'm done with burnt sienna, I'm just gonna go over with my lightest color and burnish these a little bit. I apply a little bit pressure here to blend all these colors in. So this is not a bad first layer, if you ask me. Once you lay down the first layer, you know what to do in the next layer, because you can exactly see which color is supposed to go where and what hair structure looks like there. Now, as a next step, I would like to add more layers. And I'm going to start with sepia again, making the darkest places stand out more. The root of the hair is always darker, guys. As I said before, I'm adding those darkest points. Now I have black in my hand, and now I'm adding the darkest of the dark. I think here is pretty dark, actually. Try not to overdo with black though, because if you do too much black, it's not gonna look natural. Now it's time for me to add the flying hair with my X-Acto knife. I think it's the most fun part of it all. He has more flying hair in this part than the other parts. So I'm putting down the reference photo right there so you can see where I am kind of focusing on. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. You can always go over them with your pencil and hide it. So not only for flying hair, but I also use X-Acto knife to add some highlights, guys, which I'm doing right now. Another way of adding highlights is, as I mentioned before, to go over them with your white color. And Caran d'Ache Luminance white color or Prismacolor Premier white pencil is great on that. I'm adding white not to everywhere or every highlight, but I'm adding them to the brightest parts that I see in this hair. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, guys. I tried to explain my process. If you want to watch more colored pencil tutorials, they're on the left for you. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video. I'll see you next week. Bye.